There are some of our prime ministers who have been brought up in serious poverty. Callaghan was one. Harold Wilson, I think, was another. John Major was another, travelling around the country with his parents who were in Variety. And Julie Andrews talks about the stress that the Variety circuit, going from theatre to theatre all the year round, performing, the stress that had on the family and on her. And then there's Rishi Sunak. And he was asked by the ITN interview that he did instead of being at the D-Day celebrations, commemorations, he was asked what he had to do without in order to go to school. And he said that he missed having a Sky subscription. This would be at the beginning of the Sky thing, the Sky phenomenon. And when everybody had little dishes, or people had little dishes outside their house, and the television screens got gradually bigger and bigger and bigger. I think there's a lot to be said for a big television screen, because you can use it as a computer and you can do interesting things on it. But watching Netflix on a huge screen, or watching Sky on a huge screen with a satellite box, it's a little bit sort of yeah. I'm not surprised his parents, who his father was a doctor, his mother ran a pharmacy. I'm not surprised that they were reluctant to let him have a Sky subscription, and that they wanted him to focus on his education, for which they had scrimped and saved, and they were dedicated to his success, and he's been extremely successful. Now, apparently, he's got more money than the king. More money and less sense. And that's sad, because I think he means well. He's just somehow divorced from reality, because he's in such a tight-knit little coterie of chums that he can't see beyond that. He can't see the real world. And he's missed opportunities, serious opportunities to help. And I don't think his heart is in the wrong place. I think his heart is in the right place. But it's surrounded by this band of chums. And I think his recent decisions have been appalling. He doesn't deserve to win the next election. And then we've got Farage. Farage, rather like David Cameron, both their fathers are stockbrokers. You don't hear that very much from David Cameron, do you? In fact, you don't hear very much about David Cameron's school days. I know a great deal about David Cameron's school days, because I know people who were at school with him. And he doesn't come out very well from them. But nobody wants to be the person who breathes the stories about David Cameron. And frankly, people are allowed their past. I think it's appropriate. People can make mistakes in the past, and they can rise above them. And maybe we shouldn't be asking what statesmen did when they were little. It's not our business, is it? But we sometimes wonder, what defines somebody? What defines Rishi Sunak except for his money? His earnestness to do something. His earnestness to be liked. Well, that's out of the window now, isn't it? But it was very much the thing in evidence when he was Chancellor. His earnestness. And I think for all these people, the chums that surround him, to squash that thing out of him, the one thing he had, the thing that defined him, to get rid of that, is really sad. Essentially, when somebody enters high office, what you want to do is to emphasize the thing they do well, even if the country isn't used to that. You emphasize what somebody does well and you make it bigger. What's happened to Rishi Sunak is he's become the receptacle of other people's ideas. He's been fed slogans, he's been fed speeches, and he's become a puppet. Not as much of a puppet as Liz Truss, because she is self-puppeting. But he is controlled. He may be trying to do the right things, but he doesn't come across as authentic. Liz Truss, on the other hand, I'm afraid, does come across as completely authentic and vacuous. Theresa May was another person. She was desperate to give herself some backstory, running through fields of wheat. Why bother? What a stupid thing to talk about. She just looks ridiculous. Whereas, in fact, she has quite a good backstory. Being a vicar's daughter, being earnest, working hard. That's her story. She should have stuck to that rather than this nonsense about running through a field of wheat. With or without clothes, who cares? She was harming somebody's crop. And there's nothing positive about that story. And we can go back further. Gordon Brown, the rugby game. That's interesting. That's interesting. And the way he overcame the problems that led to. Losing an eye, the determination to keep going, the bullishness, which was clearly there as a boy playing rugby. That's a useful story to know. Blair? Who cares what Blair's childhood was? It's not important. And thankfully he never dwelt on it, because it wasn't important. He knew. He knew. Thatcher? Quite different. Thatcher wanted to bring us the principles of thrift, the principles of living above the shop. We didn't learn very much about Thatcher's childhood. What we learnt about was the metaphor of the shop that structured her approach to living above Downing Street. But what does Sky TV tell us? It tells us nothing except for being spoiled. Being spoiled, and there's one point to which his parents say no. Rishi? No. I think they should have said no a few more times.